Today I want to take a really close look at what happens when you're trying to remove ease from a sleeve cap. This came up during my class this past weekend. I had a very exciting week of teaching last week. I taught Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on Sunday I was teaching my efficient workflow for bodice fitting, and things were really going along well. My students were making really good progress. And then we hit a snag on one of my students' patterns when we were trying to adjust the sleeve to fit into the armhole. So basically, the short story on that is, first we thought we had negative ease. Then we realized that we were using the wrong armhole to check it against the sleeve cap. We used like a previous version that didn't include all the adjustments. So then we started comparing the sleeve cap to the armhole that had all the adjustments, and we had 1 3/4 inches of ease. So my initial thought was, I went back to my head when I think about pattern grading and how the size of a sleeve gets bigger, or as it gets bigger, the cap is graded higher above, like in a stacked, in a stacked graded nest. And it kind of looks like this. Here's a picture of one of my sleeve patterns that is graded. And you can see here that, each size, as it gets larger, it's positioned above the cap of the smaller size below it. So I thought, wow, why don't we trim off some of the edge of the sleeve cap to get the ease down a little bit? Because the other issue was she had a relatively short cap height, so we could afford to trim some off. So she trimmed some off, walked her sleeve, and she said to me, that added 1/2 inch to the ease. And I was thinking to myself, how could that be true? So what I want to do here is I want to investigate some of these things with you, so when you're working on fitting your sleeve into your armhole, if this comes up, you can kind of see what's really happening here. So what I did was I made a couple copies of the sleeve that I worked with in the class, and you can see I've got 2 copies here, and I've marked the stitching line, and I marked the stitching lines on the armhole, so we're all ready to go here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to walk the sleeve into the armhole as is. So let's start with the front, because of course the first thing you want to do is figure out how much ease you have. So just to keep this a really, detailed deep dive look here, I'm going to walk my sleeve, and basically I'm just going to walk it along. I'm going to walk my cap along the armhole, pivoting on my stitching line. Okay, and when I get to the top, right here, I'm going to make a note that this is where my front shoulder seam is, and I'm just going to label this front. Okay. Then I'm going to walk the back sleeve cap into the back armhole. Okay, so again, I'm just lining up the edges and walking it along the stitching line. Okay, so now I'm at the shoulder of the back, so I'm going to make a note there. This is my back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace them through to the right side of the sleeve here. So this is my back, this is my front. All right, and I want to make sure you can see it on camera, so I'm actually going to use, let's use a Sharpie marker to make that really bold. So this is my back, that's my front. So right now, this sleeve cap has ease from here to here. You don't measure on the very edge of the cap, you measure down at the stitching line. Okay, so that's the first thing that you want to make sure you're doing, is make sure you calculate the ease at the stitching line. So let's say, for argument's sake, I wanted to reduce the ease. Now it really doesn't matter how much ease I have here. This isn't a real garment, but I just want to show you what happened in the class. When we first checked it, the student told me she had 1 3/4 inches of ease, which is way too much. So my goal was to remove some of the ease by trimming away the edge. So let me just do that. I'm going to do that right on this piece. So I'm going to trim 1/4 inch off. So halfway between my stitching line and my edge. I'm just going to eyeball it here, but I'm going to basically cut off about 1/4 inch. Approximately. Okay, so I've cut that off, which in my mind brings me to one size smaller, which would mean that I have less ease, right? So let's walk it again and see what happens. Let's first walk to the back. So I'm going to go ahead and walk this. And again, I'm going to go use the seam allowance on the armhole to pivot, because you always want to pivot on the stitching line. So when I get to the end here in the back, you're going to notice that it only removed next to nothing. So my back is right there now. And then let me do the front. So again, I'm going to just, run this around. All right, so look at how interesting this is. In the front, it's actually a shade bigger than it was the first time. So my front ended up here and my back ended up here. So my back ended up just inside the original line and my front ended up just outside. So to me that does not make sense, because I grade patterns and I know that when sizes get bigger or a curved line gets bigger, it gets bigger. But then I started to look at the curves. And what I want to show you here, this is my explanation for why you don't get a significant reduction in ease when you trim off the edge of the whole cap. From here to here, this line actually gets longer from here to here because it's a dip, right? And over here, same thing. From here to here, this is getting longer. Okay, and then this up here, from like here to here, so from this area here to here, that part of the cap is basically going to be the same because it's almost a straight line, right? The only place it gets smaller is along the top of the cap from here to here. You can see an inside curve here is going to get smaller. So depending on the shape of your sleeve and how big the wings are or the inside curves, right, versus the cap at the top, the net result could be very similar, because the line is getting longer here, it's getting shorter here, and here it's kind of staying the same. So trimming off the entire edge of the sleeve cap is not a good idea to reduce ease. So that's the first conclusion I want to make here. Now, the next thing I want to show you is I'm going to get another sleeve, and just to minimize the amount of time I'm spending on walking things, I'm going to transfer the original ease from when I walked it the first time before I trimmed. So this is my original ease that matches what I did Okay, so I don't have to walk it again. So now I'm going to say, all right, I want to remove ease. I've shown you how to make little L-shaped guidelines in the past. I want to try something a little bit different this time. I'm going to draw a vertical line in the center of the cap. And it really doesn't even matter where it is. I'm going to make it right. Well, I guess I'll just make it right here. And then I'm going to make another one over here. And I'm going to make another one over here. So I've got 3 lines drawn on my sleeve. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3/8 inch darts, essentially. So I'm going to go from 3/8 to 0 at the wrist edge. So I'm just going to draw these in. Okay, so here, this is 3/8, this is 3/8, and this is 3/8. So you would think if I close these darts, I should be able to get rid of 1 inch of ease, because 3/8 is almost 1/3 of an inch. I mean, it's a little bit more than 1/3. So technically, if I slash this 3 times and I get rid of 3/8 inch, 3/8 of an inch in 3 places, that should give me a pretty good size reduction in cap length. So let me just close all of these slashes to get rid of this ease, or get rid of this length along the cap. Oops. All right, so I've slashed and overlapped all 3. Okay, so we have a little bit of a truing up thing we have to do because the top of the cap is now morphed. So I'm just going to put a piece of paper here, and I'm going to put a piece of paper here. I'm just going to tape it down here for now. So the way I like to true these things up is the least invasive way possible of, you know, adding a little bit below the adjustment and then trimming a little bit off above the adjustment. So you see you're making a very tiny or non-invasive change to the curve. So let me show you what it looks like after I fix it. So you can see I changed it as little as possible to true that up. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to just add a little and then trim a little. Okay. All right, and I'm going to cut that off. Okay. So now I have a sleeve cap that I slashed and overlapped in 3 places, 3/8 of an inch. Let's re-walk this and see what our ease is now. So let's start with the front. All right, so let's see. Okay, so you can see that here is where my front is, and it's pretty darn close to where my back is. Front. And let's see what our back is. Okay, let's see. All right, so my back is right here. So it's landing right actually on where the front is. So they're almost identical. So both my front and back are right here. That means it almost closed the entire amount of ease. So if we look at how much ease we had originally, because I copied it off of here, we had originally we had 5/8 inch of ease. So there was 5/8 of an inch of ease originally. When I slashed and overlapped it in 3 places, I ended up with maybe a 1/16 of an inch of ease. So it barely changed the length of the cap a 1/2 inch when I slashed and spread it 3/8, which is 9/8, which is 1 1/8, because that's what 3/8 times 3 is. And it only netted me a like barely 5/8 of reduction in cap length. So this is something I want you to consider when you're trying to get rid of ease or even add ease. It works the same way if you're going in the opposite direction. Just keep in mind that if you're going to slash and overlap to remove ease on the cap, you need to slash and overlap more than what it adds up to get the reduction you're looking for. I just thought this was a really interesting thing to look at, and I just want to point out to you that if you are raising or lowering the cap height, the same thing is true. If I'm going to do it on this one so it's not messy. If I draw a line across my cap right above my notches like this, and let's say I want to remove a 1/2 inch of cap height. Okay, so I slash that and slide it down. You would think I would end up with a perfect inch because I let it down a 1/2 inch over here and a 1/2 inch over here. But when you walk it, the end result is going to be that the cap is not a whole inch shorter than it was. So I just want to point these things out to you because working with a curved edge and trying to reduce it and then compare it to an opposite curve has some tricky things. And I found that very interesting that when we were really looking at it and, really diving down deep and looking at what was happening to the sleeve cap as we were trying to adjust it, and we were getting these weird, we were getting weird results basically. And also it was like the last hour of my 12-hour class. So I have to admit I was a little tired, but I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I think I need to share this with everybody because, if you're trying to reduce things and you're not getting the amount of reduction doesn't equal what you took out, this is why it doesn't add up. And I just wanted to point this out to you. So when you're adjusting the ease on your cap, you can take this into consideration and maybe make a little bit bigger of an adjustment so that you can get the total reduction or increase of ease that you're looking for along your cap. So I hope you enjoyed this fun little look at ease on a cap compared to the armhole, and then how to reduce it and what's working and what's not working so well. I hope this maybe shortens any frustration that you might have if you are trying to adjust your sleeve for ease. So thank you guys for watching. I also want to point out that I am wearing my Christian Dior tee. So I got this fabric at the Confidence Stitch, and then I worked on it last week on FabFit Friday. And remember, I was teaching 5 days in a row last week, and I just wanted to sew it together and try it on. So I rushed, and I messed up the ease across the above the bust seam here. So if you go check that out, if you missed it, you can see some hot mess sewing. And then I'm just wearing it today to show you that it is in fact all better. I took out from here to here, right here, and I just re-established or just redistributed the ease and sewed it back up, and it was a little bit wonky. So here's a pro tip. A pro tip: if you rush and make a mistake and take out a knit garment, stretch out your seams so when you sew it back together it still looks wonky. I threw it in the washer and dryer, and when I got it out of the dryer, everything smoothed out and went back to its shape. So it worked for this fabric. I would hazard a guess that it could work for lots of other fabric too, because when you wash and dry something, it will sort of reshape, reset. So when you put it on, it looks nice and, ready to go. So that's my little tip for, if you're going to take apart a knit garment, put it back together, and if you still have stuff that won't steam out, just try washing and drying it, and maybe you'll get, it'll work itself out. Because I was 2 steps away from taking it apart and trying to fix it again, and I thought to myself, I don't want to mess up this fabric, so I took the chance and threw it in the washer and dryer, and that was the answer. So yay for that. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying my content, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel because it helps me grow. I will put links to this t-shirt pattern and the tutorial where I show how to design this new neckline in the description below as well, if anybody would like to try it. So thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.